This weekend, we'll have more fantasy baseball drafts than any other. Today, Matt and I are providing you with the best draft strategies and tips to help you walk away with a Locked On championship. We'll discuss all that and more on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Sports Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source for fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino, here with my brother and my co-host, Matthew Arne.
Yo, what's good?
You can find us on all podcasting apps and social media platforms. Just search for Locked On Fantasy Baseball and we'll be there. If you listen on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else that allows ratings and reviews, we truly appreciate it. If you could do that for us, it goes a very, very long way to help the outreach of the podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little subscribe button. It will notify you every time we drop a new episode. And also, please be sure to leave a like and a comment because we love to talk fantasy baseball with you. And guys, once again, we truly appreciate each and every single one of you. And if you're new here, and you happen to like the episode, if you could share this podcast on YouTube with a friend or two or three, it will help us a lot. Matt and I are just about to get to that 1,000 subscriber mark, and it helps us a long, long way if we do get there. And each and every one of you has been a huge, huge help along the way. And we appreciate all of our fans. And guys, today's episode is brought to you by the Gametime ticket purchasing app. This is the best app to buy tickets for your favorite sports teams, musical artists, and more. Download the Gametime app now, and you won't be disappointed. Guys, on today's episode, Matt and I are switching things up. We're doing something a little bit different today. We're going to be talking about the best draft strategies and tips to help you win your draft and dominate your league this year. And there's plenty of different ways to go about it. And Matt, why don't you take it off, my brother, and let's help these people out win their drafts this weekend.
Yes, sir. So, tip number one, know your league settings, roster positionings, and scoring. So, obviously that's kind of like an easy, quick thing, but you'd be surprised, how many times people don't really pay attention to these things, and that's where you kind of lose out on your advantage going into the draft, making a draft strategy, right? So, like, one, knowing your settings, right? How many innings are required for you to have to pitch for your scoring to count, if there is? How many ads you're allowed to do a week? What's your waiver situation like? More for your draft, like your roster positioning. So how many catchers, if it's a 2-catcher or 1-catcher, how many outfielders, is there a corner infielder, you guys doing center, left, right, outfielders, like, you got to know your rosters and what that's going to look like, because you got to plan on who you're going to draft. And lastly, scoring. Like, you could have some crazy weird scoring situation where you can have, super hitter, what do you call it? Hitter heavy, predominant, pretty much, where like you have like 7 to 10 categories just for hitting and then 5 for pitching, or vice versa, because that's going to change and skew how you're going to draft and give, your hitters or your pitchers a bump in your drafting when you're drafting in your rankings. So, you really want to be aware of that. And, that is my take on this one. I mean, Dom, I think you got the next one, my guy.
Let me jump in on the first one
Sure.
real quick. I want to throw some love to, our points league players out there, right? So when we're talking about scoring specifically, I know we don't give points leagues a lot of love here. And guys, the thing with scoring settings and points league, they're so subjective, meaning that there's a million different ways you can set up the points league, right? You could have home runs be worth 5 points. You could have home runs worth 10 points. You could have pitcher strikeouts worth 3 points. You could have them worth 5 points. So this is my strategy, right? If I'm playing in a points league, You go to, the players list and you pull up last year's stats and you see who scored the most points in the league. If it was hitters, you lean a little bit hitter heavy. You go for some of the bigger bats in the first few rounds. If your league is the opposite and the pitchers were the high scorers, then you know what? Maybe not in the first round, but the second, third round, maybe you grab up a couple of pitchers. Maybe you get you a Sandy Alcantara and a Corbin Burnes, in the first and second round if you can grab them. Just take advantage of your league scoring when it comes to points leagues, guys, because it's not very hard. It's not something that's very hard to do, and you can just take advantage of your whole league by doing that, by knowing what's going on. Matt, I think you covered everything else in that one very, very well, so I'm not really going to add too much to that. But now let's get into our next bullet point here, right? And this one is, once again, these are very simple, tips and tricks to help you, take that next level. So, guys, I would recommend just take out, the notes app on your phone or a pen, if you're old school, pen and paper, and just write some of this stuff down going into your draft so you remember. Our second tip is don't be afraid to reach around or too early for a guy that you truly want. I'll give you a great example, and I know we talked about him 100 times, so this is 101. Anthony Rendon. Anthony Rendon is going super late right now. And just to give you an example, he's coming off the board at pick 210. And this last weekend, I had a couple of big drafts. I went around, pick 180, 170, and I took him there because I knew there was other people in my league that liked him, and I know that I want him on my team this year. So you reach a little bit. It doesn't, you don't do it dramatically. You don't, if he's going off the board at pick 210, you don't come in at pick 100 and grab him. You don't be over the top about it. But you know what? If you got to reach around or too early just to make sure he's on your team, once again, doesn't have to be Anthony Rendon. It could be anybody. It could be Stanton. It could be Kris Bryant. It could literally be any player. If that's somebody you need to have on your team this year, go ahead and do it. Round or too early. That's all you got to do.
Right, and that really applies when you're at the you're at that point where you feel you need to get a position and you know that the next couple of guys you really don't like. So like this is your last guy. Yeah, reach a little bit. Not extreme, but do it. But let's move on. Let's move on here. Don't just follow ADP or standard rankings. Use ADP to plan out your picks, not use that as your Bible. So essentially, you want to know what ADP is, and ADP is to let you know where the average draft position, that's where people are grabbing these people, these players. And you got to use your rankings to tell you who you prioritize them over, right? Who do you think is going to perform better? And you use that along with the way the ebbs and flows in the construction of your team during the draft and uses them as resources. So, that is how you construct your team. And then use ADP to plan out your next picks. So, for instance, okay, I have the first overall pick, right? And I pick my guy. All right. So I'm going to scroll down all the way down to pick 24 because that's my next pick. I have 24 picks before my next pick, right? So I want to see based off of ADP who's going to be there, and I'm going to plan out who's going to be in that area. And then I'm going to be like, okay, let me get this. Let me make sure I'm getting these guys. Okay, this is how I want to construct my team. If this doesn't work out and this guy gets picked, boom, 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 boom. But if this guy falls to me, and just plan it out in your head and set that cue up so you got this thing rolling and you know what you're going to do next. So you're not just like, oh, I don't know what to do. And now the clock's about to run out and now you're screwed. So, make sure you're using those three things, but it's not your Bible. It's just a way to plan ahead.
Yeah, Matt, you covered that pretty good. I'm just going to throw my 2 cents in here. So if you're drafting online, right, you're drafting on Yahoo or CBS or wherever you may be drafting. Now, they're going to give you a straight list of, there's a bunch of different ways you can sort it, but it's just going to be pretty much a straight down list of players, right? And that, once again, as Matt said, that's not your Bible. It's not like, oh, okay, I need to stay in this little area. No, you don't necessarily have to do that. What I like to do is if the draft room opens 30 minutes early, get there 30 minutes early if you can, 25 minutes. As fast as you can get in there, the better, because then you could scroll down that long list of names and start queuing guys off, and then you could really draft off of your queue. So, and then you could, I know on Yahoo, but most other platforms, you can move guys around on your queue. So I hate to keep using Anthony Rendon, but, if he's at 200, you queue him up. You could just slide his name up if you like him a little bit early, if you like him above some of the other players, that are going, a little few rounds earlier, just move him up so you don't forget him. Another good example is Michael Kopech. He's buried right now, around pick 300. So queue him up and then move him up that queue. Move him to where you see fit amongst the names that are already in your queue. So, guys, with all that being said, we have a new sponsor today that you're absolutely going to love, and that is the Gametime ticket app. So, have you ever tried to buy tickets to see your favorite artist or sports team and wound up being stressed out by how much of a hassle it can be? Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. That's why you need to check out the Gametime app. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theaters near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Using the Gametime app is super rewarding with flash deals and last-minute tickets, easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area, image of the seat's views, which is actually great so you can see exactly where you're sitting and what you're going to see from that seat, lowest price guarantees, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and etc. I mean, there's a reason it's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase on the Gametime app. So download the Gametime app today to get your last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Check it out absolutely now. All right, guys, so we're going to move on to our next tip. And Matt, do you want to grab that one?
Sure. All right. So, be prepared to be prepared by doing research, meaning make sure you know who's hurt, have your ranking sheet set up and printed out, and make sure you have our rankings ready to rock too. You want to make sure that you have all your resources ready and available so that when you hit that draft, you know exactly what's going on. Make sure you have your own queue. If you're doing a live draft, make sure you highlight your guys, maybe make a separate list, type them up, put it on the back, who your targets are going to be, really be prepared. And then also too, maybe what I like to do is I like to put little indicators of guys that are hurt right now. Like for instance, Glass now has an oblique. Juan Soto's dealing with an oblique as well. Musgrove, you could put a bozo one for dropping a weight on his foot. It's one of those things where you just want to make sure, you have guys indicated that are hurt. So like, hey, you might want to draft them there, but hey, they may fall. So maybe an indicator to plan out and be like, yo, they're hurt, they're going to fall. Or, yo, maybe I want to avoid that. I forgot that they're hurt, but they fit my team. Let's circle back around to them, highlight them. And then, and that's pretty much it. Do your research, come prepared to the draft, and don't be like a friend of ours that does it like a week before.
Yeah, guys, so there's plenty of different websites. If you just go to Google and you type in like the MLB injured player list, and they will give you a list of all the teams with everybody that's hurt and how long that they're projected to be out for. Like I said, there's a bunch of different websites that have it. There's not one in particular that I love, so you definitely do that. And then also with this, have our rankings ready, guys. I think Matt and I's rankings are some of the best rankings out there. Once again, they're skewed towards head-to-head categories, leagues, and roto. But you could also, take them for a points league draft and then adjust a little bit. Like I said, if pitchers are going a little bit higher, you could just move those pitchers around. If batters going a little bit higher as far as point scoring, then you can move it around. Our websites are available on, our website can be found by going to any of our social medias and clicking the link tree. I believe it is the first tab on there, and it literally says website. Go to it, print them out. Use the landscape view when printing them out. It'll print out very nice and clean that way. And once again, you can just get on there, cross all the names off if you're doing that draft live. We already gave you some tips if you're doing your draft online. So let's move on to our next one, right? When your pick is coming up, make sure you have a few names ready that you're comfortable taking with that pick. So if, your favorite guy that you were targeting, you get sniped on him, that you still have other guys you're okay with taking. I know back when I first started playing fantasy baseball, when my pick was up and coming, I would get very fixated on one name. and I would start panicking if that guy went. Like if I got sniped, and a lot of these picks are timed. I know if you're doing it online, it's timed. In person, they usually throw a timer on you. Everyone starts yelling at you. So if you have about 3 or 4 guys, as your pick is up and coming, and then let's say even all 4 of them, get taken, still try and just keep your head running of, okay, what position was I targeting? What does my team need? And just be prepared as your pick is coming around is the best way I can stress it for you. Just don't be fixated on one name. Have a few ready, because if you have 4 or 5 of them ready, it's not very likely, unless you're playing in a 16-man league, it's not very likely that all of them are going to be taken before you pick.
Yeah, and what comes with that too is be water and be flexible, right? So
Yes.
you want to make sure that if you do lose out on the guy you wanted, and then you look down, okay, well, I was going to target second base, for instance, but based off of ADP, I don't need to look at that again for another 2 rounds. Let me move on to a next position. What else do I have to fill? How can I build my team, and what is my team construction going to look like moving forward if my guy gets picked? So because not everything goes to plan. So you just want to stay flexible, keep your head on a swivel, and plan out your team construction in all the scenarios, because there is at least, especially if you're at the 6th spot, at least at a minimum 6 picks in between each pick. And if you're on the turn, you're planning anyway for 5, 6 anyway. So you just want to, be water and just get prepared for each and every pick. Let's move on. All right. So I got to look at the next one. Here we go. If you're in a keeper or dynasty, remember who your league mates like and how they like to draft. So with that, these are your friends in most of these leagues. Like, no, if you're doing an NFBC, like this tip does not apply, or like some high stakes thing. Like, yeah, you're not going to know these people in the room. But for most of us, it's your home leagues, right? So like, you got to know your friends. You got to know, hey, you got a Phillies fan in the back, you got a Yankees fan over here, and if you got that crazy Met fan that just has to draft the Mets, or Uncle Tommy just loves to draft all the Houston Astros. Uncle Tommy's gonna freaking go with like, I don't know, the catcher first. He's just gonna do something weird. Or he's an Oakland fan. Yeah, it's just weird. But like, you just gotta know, okay, am I actually by the guy that's good too? Because then that guy's gonna snipe all my picks. I really gotta be on my P's and Q's. So knowing who these people like and probably are going to target really helps you. And you can do mock drafts for that. Draft Wizard is a great place because you can kind of input your league in that scenario. You can log in every single team and run the different scenarios of how the draft can play out based off of where you're drafting. And you can run that scenario over and over and over again. And, once that happens too, also take your rankings, our rankings, cross off all the keepers and all the dynasty people, and start going, okay, who's the best player available? Where am I going from here? Who is going to be the guy? Who do I think is going to be picked if I have a later pick? Who do I think is going to fall to me? So on and so forth. Be prepared, know the people around you, and just really take that on. Keeper and dynasty picks are one of the leagues where there's a lot that can go into it, and it's a different draft entirely. So just understand how people take and look into these drafts and how you think they're going to go into this draft.
Yeah, guys, if you've been like, once again, this is advice for mainly like home leagues and leagues that you've been playing for years, that you kind of have an idea of who your friends or league mates like to draft. Like, for instance, if if these are your friends and you've been talking baseball for the last few months, and somebody was like, oh my God, I love O'Neal Cruz. I think O'Neal Cruz is going to have a monster breakout year. And O'Neal Cruz is somebody you want. Don't, like our earlier tip said, don't be afraid to take him a round or 2 early. It just pretty much states that, I'll give you, for instance, I know Matt loves Michael Kopech. I took Michael Kopech a little bit earlier than he was going off the board, because I knew Matt wanted Michael Kopech and I wanted Michael Kopech too. So that pretty much sums it up. I think Matt gave a lot of great tips in that, specific category there. So I think I'm just going to keep it moving on here. So now we're going to kind of get into more positional talking and how the outlook is for this year at some positions and what you should do. So when it comes to like closers specifically, real quick, guys, actually, hold on. Before we there's a little tease. Before we jump into what to do with all of these, positions for this year and how we think, Matt's got a little something he wants to chime in on here.
Yeah. Here at Locked On, we're super excited about our new sports betting partner, FanDuel, who Dom almost forgot. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and it's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook app. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from money line, points drained, and points scored and threes drained. Plus, you can even combine all these crazy odds and different things from money lines and threes drained into the same bet for the same game parlay to get a better payout. So don't miss your chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Dom. Now that you were so excited, you could take that. All right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That is on me, folks. But you know what? When it comes to specifically closers, unless you're in a league that rewards having one of the top closers, you can wait. It's not something that is absolutely, desperate that you do. I will say this, however, in recent years, I kind of have been changing my tune a little bit, in the sense of I would like to have a top 10 closer. It doesn't need to be Class A. It doesn't need to be Hader. It doesn't need to be Romano. But as you're coming down a little bit, watch what your league mates are doing, and there's always a closer run. There's always a closer run. So if you see two closers go in a row and then you have a pick, grab one. I would like to have one elite one, and if you get one of the top 10 closers, all right, then you could wait. Then you could grab a Johan Duran a little bit later, grab a Pete Fairbanks a little bit later. And I will say, play the waiver wire game when it comes to closers, because you need to be on top of it. If you're gonna use this strategy, which does work out most of the time, get your one really good one that is probably gonna have the job for the whole year unless injury comes around, and then keep an eye on if someone gets hurt. You got to be active on that waiver wire. You got to make sure that you're around. And it kind of same thing applies with catcher. Those kind of go hand in hand in the sense of, you don't need to go out there and get you the JT Realmuto or the Salvador Perez or, even Adley, who I do love. Catcher is kind of deep this year. You can wait, get yourself a Gabriel Moreno, who is, pretty much starting now that Carson Kelly, I believe he messed up his forearm. He might have broke his forearm or something like that. I know it's a really bad injury where he's going to be out a while. William Contreras goes late. There's just a bunch of names there with that position that you could just wait on it. You don't have to jump the gun. Get yourself some of those thinner positions first.
Yeah. No, you pretty much nailed it there. One thing I do like saying is, though, with relief pitcher, I was seeing before Edwin got hurt that he was going in like the third or fourth round, and Class A wasn't going too far after. And I find that completely outrageous. Like, you might have like the top 6 go super early, and you don't want to be one of those people, right? I tend to just stay away and try and scoop them after like pick 8 or 9, unless there's like a crazy run, then I just need to get one of them. But, you got to remember, everybody's got to have 2. So there is 24 closers that you're going to be able to get. Now, the problem is that the end of the 24, the last maybe 5 or 6 may not keep their job. And that's where you really got to be aware. But it's okay, because last year we were pretty spot on with that. So if you keep listening, we'll keep providing you with that closer advice for that waiver wire. And then for catchers, you know what? You only have to really take one. They usually don't play every day, so I really don't value them as high as other bats, right? So like catchers are just like whatever, unless you're snagging like an Alejandro Kirk, an Aldi, or who's another one I like? I'm sorry, it's slipping my mind. Realmuto, and then Varsho. Guys that play every day because they play other positions outside of Realmuto. He just plays. That play other positions that keep them on the field. Emmanuel Melendez as well. Those are the guys that, like, hey, I'm kind of okay with keeping that, going to pick them if I have to, if the value is great. But other than that, if I'm not trying to get them and it's between them and like Kris Bryant, for instance, I'm going to go Kris Bryant, because there's no way in hell a catcher's going to put up what he's going to do. And that's why, like, okay, I'd rather go late. I've been targeting, really bad Logan O'Hoppe, who should get the call, and I think is going to have a good season. Or if not, I'll just play the waiver wire. Anyway, and then lastly, outfielders. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead of it, ladies and gentlemen. Um, let me just go to it now, I guess, right?
Yeah, you can talk because it kind of goes hand in hand. You could talk about outfielders.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I'll go to the whole tip. We'll skip that one for a second. So be aware of talent drop off at each position and be aware of outfield scarcity, right? So in every position, there's a drop off of talent, right? You know, we didn't do it for you this year. We didn't do our tiers that we normally would do for ourselves. But you know, tier it off where, hey, like this is the last guy I feel comfortable leaving as starting at that position, right? So like for me, for at first, Vinny P is the last guy, right? And then for third base, so on and so forth. So you want to make sure you're aware of that so that you are not left in a lurch where you're missing out on that. And now you have a middling talent. And now you got to pray you can find somebody off the waiver wire because you know they're not going to be good, you know, halfway through the season. So like just be aware. And then outfielders, you know, this is the one that you keep them, you have to draft the most of, right? So in the past, there's usually about anywhere from like 36 to like 45 outfielders that I usually feel comfortable walking away as my 3, right? But now there really isn't. There's maybe like 26 and a half that's like you kind of feel good about. And then the rest is like, okay, these guys have upsides. This guy can kind of be like, okay, but then they have injury, but like they have flangey issues. And then you're just like, okay with this. So like there's no too much of a safe guy at outfield. So if you're playing like a 4 outfield guy, you really got to be aware of this because then you're really screwed. So just be aware of that outfield drop off specifically.
Matt, I have a question for you, brother.
Sure.
You said 26 and a half. So who's half the man? Who are we counting as half? I need to know.
All right, let me see.
Is it Buxton? Is it Byron Buxton?
Well, no.
Does he count as half because he's a flanges guy?
That's just a quarter. Yeah.
I'm busting chops, brother. I just found that funny.
It's Bryce Harper because he's going to play half a season.
All right, good. Okay, there we go. Fair enough. So, guys, just gonna bounce off of what Matt said. You know, Matt did a great job of covering this here. But with outfielders, I would say there's about 30. And, you know, Matt kind of said, if it's a 4 or 5 outfielder league, you got to go outfielder early. In the first round, there's about 9 outfielders that I would be comfortable with taking in the first round. So know the position scarcity, as Matt said. You know, grab your outfielder in the first round. Third base is also very thin. You could go, you know, third base in the second round. You get your Manny Machado and Austin Riley, one of those guys. First base is a little top heavy. I think the top 4 first basemen, where it's Goldschmidt, Alonso, Freddie, and Vlad, not in any particular order. You want to grab preferably one of them, because then otherwise you're stuck between Vinny P and Jose Abreu, and then it kind of is just dart throwing there. So I like to go outfield first, and, you know, third. Second is also pretty thin this year, especially without Jose Altuve. You know, we still have Jazz around, and then Vaughn Grissom, you know, gets sent down. So that's, you know, one of our deep sleepers that isn't really there anymore. So you really have Simeon, Jazz, and, you know, Ozzy Albies, and then it kind of falls off a cliff. You know, so you kind of got to pay attention there, or, you know, if you don't get one of those, just let it fall at that point. And then when it comes to starting pitching, guys, you can wait. You can wait on starting pitching. Kind of the same thing that I'm applying to closer, in the sense of get an ace, get one of the top 10, you know, starting pitchers, and then you can wait. This year specifically, the starting pitcher goes about 70 deep. It literally goes so deep. And then you could, you know, get your bats early and then start mixing in starting pitchers. I'll tell you this. I had 2 drafts over the weekend, and I applied that strategy, and it paid off very, very well. In one of my drafts, Corey Seager fell very far, and I didn't expect him to. So I had a decision. I was like, okay, there's some starting pitchers there that I really like, but hitting thins out so early is like, let me take Corey Seager, and then I'll get my arms later on, and it worked out for me. But guys, you know, that's about it for there. We got a couple of more here, so, you know, stay tuned. We got a couple of more here for you.
Yes, sir.
This one is pretty simple. You don't want to draft too many young prospects, and you don't want to draft too many older dudes or injured players. So you kind of want to have a nice mix of everything. So, you know, if you're out there taking like a Clayton Kershaw, you don't want a Jacob Degrom on your team as well. If you're taking an Anthony Volpe, you don't necessarily want a Jordan Walker as well. If you're taking, what else do we say here? If you're taking an Anthony Rendon, you don't want another older guy. I can't think of anyone to like an Evan Longoria, even though he's not really fantasy relevant. But you understand what I'm
you
saying.
don't want to draft Alberto Mondesi, well, at all, but
yeah, he goes with the injury players. You don't want him and Byron Buxton on your team.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. So don't pair up too many of the same types of players. You want to have a nice spread overall.
Yeah. Like, like some of these guys are worth a bet, like worth banking on and trying to see if the upside is back and that they can play a full season, or these guys can have a great first season, but you don't want to load up. And, what I find with a lot of people is they get so obsessed with these young dudes, right? Like I'm one of them. Like I am a prospect nerd and a half. Like it's funny. Like I'm sitting here and, if you watched our mock drafts, like, okay, like I was wrong about Ellie De La Cruz, but I was totally right on Volpe. And like you'll see me scoop up like him and maybe another prospect, but you know what? Like I go against my own rules. And I try not to do that in real drafts, right? I just like to see. Volpe's called up, but you don't know if he's going to be successful or not. It's his first season up, and spring is different from the real deal. So you don't want to get tied up with these guys and then be like, boom, I'm screwed here. It's and not to say like the Corbin Carrolls or the Gunnar Hendersons. They were an exclusion. They had 56 games under their belts, for instance. I'm not the exact sure number, but they were successful in the bigs in a real deal situation, not just spring. And then, Flanges guys, if it looks like they're going to get a what do you call it? A hospital wing named after them, don't get more than one. And that's really just about it. Let me just say one last thing before we get out of here.
Of course,
have fun. Enjoy this. This is what I call Christmas every year. Merry Christmas, guys. Christmas is here this weekend, and we're going to open up our presents by drafting our team. And just don't stress out. Just have a couple beers and enjoy and sit back and then talk a whole bunch of smack. Do it the whole draft just for fun, especially to the kid that gets pissed off the most in your league. It's the best time in the world.
Yeah, guys, just Matt, you actually nailed that. Guys, just go, young kids, you're already going to have fun. But if you're getting a little bit older like Matt and I, and, you got a full-time job, and it's not a Built Bar ad, I promise you, it's not a Built Bar ad. But if you're busy throughout the whole week and, it just keeps going and going, and this is your time, if you do your draft live and you get to be with your friends and, have a good time, don't let the little things bother you. Don't stress out. Enjoy it. Take pictures, build memories that are going to last a lifetime with you and your buddies, and just enjoy it. Truly enjoy this weekend. On behalf of Matt and I and Locked On, guys, we wish you all the best. We hope you dominate your drafts with all of these tips and guides. Even go back and watch a few of our last episodes if you want to hear about any specific players. Feel free to DM us this weekend, guys. We're around. Shoot us some DMs. We'll get back to you guys. Any specific questions that we didn't cover in today's episode, where Instagram is probably the best place to get us, but we're on Twitter and everywhere else as well. So feel free to shoot those messages and we will get back to you. You got my word on that one. But guys, that is all for today. Please be sure to like, subscribe, rate, and review, and all that fun stuff. And we will certainly be back tomorrow. I believe we are doing my guys list. So that's one that you're not going to want to miss at all. It's Matt and I's favorite players that we're drafting all over the place this year. And thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. After you do that, why don't you go check out Locked On Reds? Our pal Jeff Carr hosts that one, and he knows everything there is to know about the Reds. There's a bunch of young Reds players that might get the call this year, so that's going to help you out in your fantasy leagues. And guys, until tomorrow.
Peace.
See you.